Let's talk about the shifts in the supply. So section 3.2, shifts in supply. So these are the various things that are going to be changing your supply of different products. So let's talk a little bit about that. So the first thing we need to mention are what goes into products. And that is called inputs, or the factors of production. The combination of labor, materials, and machinery that is used to produce goods and services. The way I like to think about it, inputs, the things you put in, all right, so input, the things you put in to products. And you're probably wondering, is there an output? Yes. And outputs are the things you put out on the shelf. So when we're talking about supply, what's happening here is we have the inputs. Like if we were trying to make a t-shirt, you would have cotton, you would maybe need the labor to make the shirt, maybe you would need somebody to design the label for it, maybe you would need some machines to kind of weave it together, right? So all of these factors are being put into this one t-shirt. And then once the t-shirt's done, we put it out on the shelf. And so we have all these inputs, the materials, the labor, and the machinery. We put them into the shirt and then we put it out on the shelf. So the shirt is the output. So we have cotton, labor, machines. All of these factors go into the shirt. And the shirt goes on the shelf. So that is the output, and these are the inputs. So you're probably thinking, well, I can buy cotton, right? And that is something I bought off the shelf, and that is the output, and that could be true, right? And even then, right, how'd you get the cotton? Well, we had the farmer, so labor, and maybe he had machines, right? So even that, even though you think it's an output, it still has inputs, right? So what I'm trying to say is that everything does have inputs, like it comes from something, and then we have the output, the final product. So the main thing to ask yourself, is this the output? Um, is that the final product on the shelf, right? Like if we're talking about the market for t-shirts, then the output is the t-shirts. And if we're talking about the market for t-shirts, is cotton the output? No, right? Because what are we talking about? We're talking about t-shirts. So cotton is the input because we are the t-shirt market and cotton goes into the t-shirts. So you got to ask yourself, is this the middle, right? So the start would be starting from the earth, and cotton is somewhere in the middle, and cotton goes into t-shirts. So t-shirts is the final thing. What we're trying to look for is the final good or service. That's what we're trying to look for on the output. And so it depends on what market you're looking for, but if it looks like it's an input, right, then that's what we're talking about on the inputs. And the factors of production, just so you know, are, let's call it FOP, are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And so land is anything from the earth. Absolutely anything from the earth. It could be water, it could be dirt, it could be plants, right? It's everything from the earth. Labor, that's you and me, humans. Labor is people working. Capital. Capital is where it kind of gets a little bit weird. But let me try to explain this way. If it's not earth making stuff, and if it's not humans making stuff, what else makes goods? Machines. So capital, anytime you see the word capital, think of machines, and it could also be factories. The main thing here is that it's not from the earth and it's not humans making stuff. It has to be other than that. And most of the time it is machines and factories and things like that. And the last one is entrepreneurship. So, what is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is somebody who basically has an idea and they're willing to take a risk on that idea. They are the ones that are starting businesses, basically. Like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, right? They have fantastic ideas and they are trying to, change the world. And that is their entrepreneurial ability. So that is a factor of production, because I like to think it this way. If you have an idea, right, it's not land and it's not your labor like making the idea, because labor is actually like physically making something, and it's not a machine. It's your mind creating something. It's your mind creating it's your mind as an input for the output. So entrepreneurship is a factor of production. Now, what are the factors that are going to affect supply? So all these things are going to basically say, well, because of this, you are going to make more. Because of this, you're going to make less. Number one is natural conditions. Like, for instance, a hurricane. Can you have farmers working on the land during a hurricane? No, hopefully not. So if you're having less farmers working during the day, well, then you're not making stuff. And if you're not making stuff, you have less supply. So natural conditions could be anything. It could be hurricane, right? Which usually says supply down. Or it could be the opposite. It could be good weather, which would mean supply goes up. It works both ways. The main thing about the natural conditions is just like, can we make more stuff because this is happening? The next thing is going to be the input prices. So remember how I said cotton is like the middle part of it, right? So basically, if the cotton gets more expensive, then the firms are like, well, the firms are just like a human or a consumer, right? If cotton is more expensive, do businesses buy more cotton or less cotton? Less cotton. And if a firm has less cotton, how many t-shirts can they make now? Less. So the price of inputs, if the price of inputs increases, supply goes down. And the flow is this. Input. We have an input. And the price goes up. Because the price goes up, what happened to the quantity of the input? Quantity goes down. And because you have less quantity, right? Like if the price of steel goes up, do businesses buy more or less steel? Less. And because you have less steel, you make less cars. So the supply of the output, very important there, goes down. That's how the price of inputs work. And that's why it's very important to identify what is an input and what is the output, because when the price of the input changes, that will affect the output every time. And you're going to see this in the news about like, oh, because the price of steel is going up, that will affect the price of cars. And yes, right? Because of this, or maybe businesses are trying to still keep their profits up, which is, raising the prices is a great way to do that, right? Because if the price of steel goes up $500, guess what happened to the price of the car? Increases $500. That's usually what happens here. So there's two ways of thinking about it, but the main thing, because it's more expensive, so less supply. Now, technology. Technology is a beautiful thing, and it's also your friend, because if technology increases, does it make it easier to make things? Yes. Looking at back in, like, let's say the 80s or the 90s, right, where everybody was writing everything down by hand, that would probably take forever nowadays to get things done. So because we have technology, it made that process a lot easier. So we were able to supply more things. And it's still going on today. where if you have more technology, you are able to supply more. So technology is your friend. If we have more technology, we have more supply. Easy as that. Very, very few times will technology go down, right? We're only going to be increasing on technology. So the main thing is that if you see technology on the exam, right, you're like, oh, great, I know the answer. Supply up. I'm making more stuff. It's easier. It's less opportunity costs. Things like that. And the last one's going to be government policies. Now, government policies are usually into two categories. They're either going to be taxes or they're going to be subsidies. Taxes, most people know, is you pay to the government. So guess what a subsidy is? If the taxes are paying to the government, subsidy has to be money coming in. So money from the government. So how does this affect supply? I like to treat taxes like an input cost, right? Because how can I make the t-shirt? Well, I need to pay my business taxes in order to sell the t-shirt. And, well, if my business taxes go up and the input price, right, the taxes are increasing, well, I have less money to buy other things. So because I have less things, my output's going to go down. So more taxes, pay more money. It's like an input cost, less supply. Now, what about a subsidy, right? It's money coming in. Well, if I had more money, well, I could buy more stuff. I could buy more cotton. I could buy more labor. I could probably buy another machine. And all of these things will lead to more supply. So that's the thing with subsidies. And these actually happen all the time. Basically, the government's like, you know what? We need to increase this sector of the economy, right? Maybe this business really needs help. So how can the government help? Well, they can give them a subsidy. Basically, hey, if you hire 10 people, right, we'll give you $100 for every employee that you hire. So what are the businesses going to do? They're going to figure out a way to hire more people to get the $100. And by getting the $100, right, they can use that for whatever they want. And they have more people. They have more people working. And if you have more people working, more supply. So that's kind of how subsidies could work, right? And then taxes are their own thing, where the government's like, hey, give me this taxes so I could use it for something else. And we'll get into the something else later on in the year. So that's how government policies are going to change the supply of whatever it is. Basically, taxes are an input cost. If the taxes go down, what would happen to businesses? Well, they're not spending the money on taxes anymore. They have more money because they're not giving it to taxes. If you have more money, you can buy more things, more inputs, make more outputs. Subsidies, right? After you hire the people, the government's like, you're done with the subsidy, no more. So now you're not getting that $100 anymore. So then it's like, well, I'm not going to be supplying more. And then that's the opposite, right? So if the subsidy goes down, sometimes you would be supplying less, right? Or maybe things don't change. It really depends on the situation. So government policies do affect the supply. And these are the different ways that we have changes to the supply curve, such as favorable natural conditions for production, or maybe a fall in the input prices, improved technology, or lower product taxes or less costly regulations. All of these things are going to be shifting the supply to the right. Notice here how we have S0 and S1. Remember, 0 is ground zero. It's starting here. And then we shift to the right, S1. And then these are the other factors that are going to be shifting the supply to the left, such as bad weather conditions, higher input prices, things like that. Now, in the next video, we'll talk about, I wanted to do one more thing. So these are the types of goods and services that we have. So remember how I was talking to you about the idea about the income, where if you have more money, you'll buy more things. And then I was also mentioning things that you probably won't buy anymore, right? Such as, for instance, ramen noodles. If I had more money, I wouldn't buy ramen noodles. I would probably buy more chicken, or maybe more beef, or maybe more vegetables. Maybe, have a more meal of it. Nothing wrong with ramen noodles, right? But that's just me. Okay? There's certain things that if I had more money, I would make other choices. And that comes down to two goods: normal goods and inferior goods. Normal goods are a product whose demand rises when income rises, and vice versa. So basically, if I had more money, what do I normally do? I buy more. So that's what a normal good is. It's maybe you would buy less generic brands and more name brands. Or maybe you would buy new things instead of old things. The main idea here is that you're buying less of, the main idea is that you're buying more of something. That's what a normal good is. You're buying more. So with the normal good, if your income, in economics we use Y. If you're asking me why, I do not know, but Y means income. So if your income goes up, what happens to your demand? Well, normally it goes up. And then what if my income goes down? Well, if I have less money, I can't buy as much stuff, my demand goes down. Normally. Inferior goods are a product whose demand falls when income rises, and vice versa. So this is maybe buying more generic brands when income increases. Oh wait, no, sorry. I mixed those up. Maybe it's buying less generic brands when income increases, and then buying more generic brands when income decreases. Basically, when I gave the example of if I had more money, I would buy more beef and less ramen noodles, right? Well, because I'm buying less ramen noodles, that is the inferior good. And again, this does not mean it's of cheaper quality or anything. It doesn't have to mean that. What it does mean is that I'm just buying less of it. That's the main thing. Nothing with the quality of it, nothing with my taste and preferences about it. It's just I would buy less of it because I'd rather have this one, right? There's nothing about it's not cheaper quality. It's not because of that. It's just because I have more money, I'm buying less of it, more of this. Now, if I had less money, let's say I lost my job and I only have $10 per week to eat stuff, can I buy the chicken, the vegetables, and the beef? No. I have to buy more of the ramen noodles. So if my income were to go up, I buy less of these inferior goods, and if my income were to go down, I have to buy more of them. So that's the difference between a normal good and an inferior good. Okay? We already talked about substitutes and complements. Substitutes are good where a good or service that we can use in place of another good or service, because you're getting the same utility out of it. Like the goal, right, for instance, between Whataburger and In-N-Out. The goal is a burger. So which one's cheaper, right? Because In-N-Out's too expensive, I'd rather have Whataburger. And if Whataburger's getting too expensive, I'd rather have In-N-Out. Things like that. And complements we talked about, such as ham and cheese, phones and phone cases, milk and cereal. Those things we have to buy together because that's where it enhances consumption. So, in the next section, we'll talk about 3.3, which is going to be changes to the equilibrium, which is applying what we just talked about with the shifts in demand and supply. I'll see you there.